From a black detective who called up the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, became his trusted friend over the phone, and was then assigned to stand guard as his personal bodyguard, throwing an arm around him for a photo while the Klan leader never suspected a thing, to an army sniper who climbed all the way to become the Klan's own head of security, the man trusted to hunt down spies, all while secretly wearing an FBI wire to every meeting and every burning cross. These are the 6 most audacious spies who ever infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan. Case 1. Ron Stallworth. In October of 1978 in Colorado Springs, a 25-year-old detective named Ron Stallworth was flipping through the local newspaper when he stopped on a small recruitment advertisement for the Ku Klux Klan. Stallworth was already the first African-American detective the city had ever hired, and he had spent his early career being sent undercover into Black Power meetings. So when he saw the Klan openly asking for members, he made a decision that most people would consider completely insane. He picked up a pen and answered the ad, writing a letter in the voice of a furious white racist who claimed to hate black people, Mexicans, Jews, and Asians. And then he signed it with his own real name because it genuinely never occurred to him that anyone would call back. Somebody called back, which left Stallworth with an obvious problem, so he split himself into 2 people. A white narcotics officer, known only as Chuck, physically attended every meeting wearing a hidden wire and answering to the name Ron Stallworth, while the real Stallworth handled every phone call as the voice of a Klansman who could never be seen. He even escalated to calling the Klan's national headquarters and speaking regularly with the Grand Wizard David Duke himself, who cheerfully mailed his new favorite recruit a signed membership card. Over 9 months, the operation sabotaged planned cross-burnings, exposed a plot to bomb 2 gay bars, and uncovered Klansmen serving at the United States military installations Fort Carson and NORAD, the Nuclear Warning Command near Colorado Springs, with 2 of those men quietly reassigned to postings somewhere near the North Pole. And when Duke visited the city, the department assigned Stallworth to his security detail. So the Grand Wizard spent an afternoon guarded by a black man who threw an arm around him for a photo and was never suspected once. The investigation only ended because Stallworth was doing too well, since the Klan offered to promote him to chapter organizer, and his own police chief decided that was a step too far and shut the whole thing down. Stallworth kept the entire operation secret for almost 30 years, until his story eventually became the basis for the Academy Award-winning film Black Klansman. Case 2. Gary Thomas Rowe Jr. Around 1960, in the bars of Birmingham, Alabama, a high school dropout and part-time bouncer named Gary Thomas Rowe was loudly bragging to anyone who would listen that he was secretly a government agent, which was a lie, right up until the moment the FBI decided to make it true. Agents looking to get inside the Alabama Klan noticed that this loud, brawling man already had 1 foot in the police world and 1 foot in Klan circles, so they put him on the payroll for as much as $300 a month and even covered the cost of his robe, his dues, and his initiation fees, planting him inside Eastview Claver No. 13, which happened to be the most violent Klan chapter in the entire country. The trouble with hiring a hellraiser to spy on hellraisers is that he keeps raising hell, and on Mother's Day of 1961, when Freedom Riders arrived in Birmingham, Rowe was in the mob that beat them with baseball bats, pipes, and chains inside the bus terminal. What made it far worse was that the FBI had known the attack was coming and had known that the local police commissioner had promised the Klan 15 uninterrupted minutes to do the beating, yet nobody was warned, and afterwards, Rowe's own handler collected a cash bonus. From there, the horror only deepened, because 2 years later, a bomb tore through the 16th Street Baptist Church and killed 4 young girls. And while Rowe was never charged, the FBI's files show he failed 2 lie detector tests when asked about it. Then in March of 1965, a mother of 5 named Viola Liuzzo, who had driven down from Detroit to support the Selma marchers, was shot dead on Highway 80 by men in a passing car, and Rowe was sitting inside that car. In fairness, Rowe was not useless to the Bureau, since across 5 years he fed them a genuine stream of intelligence on the most violent Klan chapter in America, and it was his own eyewitness testimony that finally convicted the 3 men who murdered Viola Liuzzo, after an all-white Alabama jury had already refused to punish them. Rowe himself was never convicted of anything, and instead of prison, he was quietly handed a new name, hidden inside the Witness Protection Program, and reportedly given a job as a U.S. Marshal. And when the victim's family later sued, the FBI admitted it had shredded 10,000 pages of documents about the informant its own director had once praised as the most reliable man he had. Case 3. Walter White. Walter Francis White was a black man from Atlanta who happened to be born with blonde hair, blue eyes, and skin so pale that almost no white Southerner ever guessed the truth. And he learned exactly what that truth meant in 1906 when he was 13 years old and a white mob came down his street during the Atlanta race riot, and his father put a rifle in his hands and told him to defend the house. That night changed him forever. And in 1918, he brought his unusual gift to the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was the country's leading organization fighting racism and lynching at the time. The group quickly realized that White could do something no one else could, which was to walk straight into the middle of white supremacy and be welcomed as one of their own. His method was as simple as it was terrifying because he would arrive in a southern town posing as a white journalist or a curious businessman, shake hands with local officials and Klan sympathizers, and let them boast to him about the lynchings they had carried out, all while he quietly memorized names, dates, and details that would otherwise have vanished forever. Over his career, he investigated 41 lynchings and 8 race riots from the inside, gathering the kind of first-hand testimony that no one else on earth could reach. The closest he ever came to death arrived in Elaine, Arkansas in 1919, where poor black farmers working for white man's lands had dared to organize for fairer pay and were being massacred for it by white mobs. Walter White spent 2 days there documenting bodies and interviewing survivors before his cover finally collapsed, and he ran through the alleys to the train station and made it aboard just as the doors closed. As the train pulled away, a cheerful conductor sat down beside him and explained that there was a black man in town passing for white, and that once the mob was finished with him, he would never pass for anything again, never realizing that the hunted man was sitting right there, nodding along. Walter White survived that ride, turned his findings into the landmark book Rope and Faggot, and went on to lead the NAACP for the next 26 years, becoming one of the most powerful civil rights figures in America. Case 4. Joseph Joe Moore. In 2007, the FBI went looking for someone who could sit perfectly still for hours and watch a target without ever being noticed, and they found Joe Moore, a former United States Army sniper whose entire military training had been built around exactly that skill, which made him the ideal man to send deep undercover into the Ku Klux Klan in northern Florida. Getting inside turned out to be almost disturbingly easy because a decorated white military veteran was precisely the kind of proud, patriotic recruit the Klan was hungry for. During his first assignment, he managed to expose a sheriff's deputy and several police officers who were secretly Klan members, and he warned the FBI about a plot to murder a Latino truck driver, and the whole thing only ended because Moore broke the FBI's rules by confiding his secret identity to his wife, and once his handler discovered he'd told her, the Bureau shut the operation down rather than risk the secret spreading any further. But in 2013, a different FBI agent came back and asked Moore to go under again, this time into a group called the Traditionalist American Knights, and within roughly a year, he had climbed all the way to Grand Nighthawk, which is the Klan's own head of security, the enforcer whose entire job is to protect the group's secrets and sniff out spies. In other words, the FBI's informant had been promoted to the exact position designed to catch FBI informants, and he did all of it while quietly wearing a hidden wire to every meeting and every ritual. The decisive moment came at a secret cross burning when the chapter's leader, a man holding the title of Exalted Cyclops, approached Moore alongside 2 other Klansmen, all of them current or former Florida prison guards, and asked for his help murdering a black former inmate named Warren Williams, who had once fought with a fellow Klansman behind bars. Moore calmly agreed to help plan the killing, then immediately handed everything he had to the FBI, and all 3 men were arrested, charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and sent to prison themselves. Across his years undercover, Moore identified dozens of law enforcement officers who were either Klan members or quietly sympathetic to them, a discovery Florida officials tried to downplay. He kept his role secret until December of 2021 when he finally revealed himself to an Associated Press reporter, partly because he had come to believe the Klan had already figured out who he was, and he and his 4 children have lived under the shadow of that fear ever since. Case 5. Jerry Thompson. In 1979, the editor of Nashville Tennessean pulled aside one of his reporters, a balding, overweight, thoroughly ordinary-looking man named Jerry Thompson, and asked him to disappear into the Ku Klux Klan, and because the assignment had to stay secret even from the rest of the newsroom, the editor covered for him by quietly telling the other staff that Thompson had gone away to deal with a drinking problem. In reality, Thompson was about to spend 16 months living a double life. By then, the Klan had broken apart into rival groups that hated each other, and instead of joining just one, Thompson decided to sneak into 2 of the biggest ones at the same time. He first joined the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, run by a man named Don Black, who would later go on to create Stormfront, one of the internet's earliest and most notorious hate websites. And then he separately joined the Invisible Empire, led by Bill Wilkinson, which meant Thompson was now quietly gathering intelligence on both feuding factions and everything they were plotting against each other and against the public. The most heart-stopping moment came at a Klan rally in Alabama, where a reporter from a rival Nashville newspaper named Larry Brinton had come to cover the event. And while scanning the crowd of hooded men, Brinton suddenly found himself staring directly into the face of Jerry Thompson, who was standing there in a full Klan sheet and hood. Both men froze because Brinton was holding one of the most sensational scoops of his career, the secret that a rival paper had a reporter buried inside the Klan, and yet he chose to say nothing at all and let his competitor keep working. A decision another journalist later called one of the most gracious things he had ever witnessed in the profession. What Thompson carried out of those 16 months was genuinely chilling, including a planned armed riot that police shut down after his editor tipped them off, and a meeting where a Klan chaplain named Bill Riccio, dressed in camouflage and armed with a pistol and a knife, calmly announced that when the Klan seized power, it would need to be ready to kill any government agents who had infiltrated the group, all while Thompson sat quietly in the same room being described in perfect detail. When his articles about the Klans finally ran, the death threats poured in so fast that he had to be placed under police protection, which was really the highest compliment the Klan could pay him. And he went on to earn a Pulitzer nomination before dying in 2019 as the ordinary man who had quietly beaten 2 Klans at once. Case 6. Stetson Kennedy. In 1946, a Florida writer named Stetson Kennedy was stuck at home because a back injury had kept him out of the Second World War. It bothered him deeply that American soldiers were overseas fighting fascism, but while the KKK was quietly growing right there in the American South, he decided to fight his own kind of war at home. To get inside, he joined Atlanta's biggest Klan chapter using the name of a dead uncle who had been a real Klansman, and that borrowed name made the other members trust him right away. Before long, he had worked his way into the Cavaliers, which was the Klan's muscle squad, and the whole time he was secretly passing everything he learned to the state of Georgia, to reporters, and to federal investigators. Then Kennedy came up with the cleverest idea anyone had ever used against the Klan. He understood that the group's power came almost entirely from mystery, from its secret passwords, its hidden handshakes, and the fear of not knowing who was under the hood. So he decided the best way to destroy that mystery was not a courtroom, but a radio show. He went to the producers of The Adventures of Superman, which was the most popular program in America and had already run out of Nazi villains for Superman to fight, and he offered them a brand new enemy, the Ku Klux Klan, along with all of its real secrets. Starting in June of 1946, Superman spent 16 episodes taking on the Klan, and every week the show revealed their secret code words and passwords to millions of listeners across the country. Whenever the panicked Klan changed a password to protect itself, Kennedy simply handed the new one to the writers before the next episode aired. Soon, children were playing Superman versus the Klan in their backyards, treating the group's most sacred secrets like a silly game, and new membership dried up. On top of all that, Kennedy dug evidence out of a Klan leader's trash that helped hit the group with a huge tax bill and helped strip away its legal charter in Georgia. He was later accused of exaggerating his own role by mixing a story with another spy, but his biggest wins were real.